I'm afraid it's time for us to have that talk. Spanking, guys, is not a good way to go. Hi, I'm Dr. Brett Pearce, child psychologist, and I'm here today to talk with you about a fairly sensitive subject. But hey, I guess a lot of the subjects I talk about are kind of sensitive. And that subject is indeed spanking. And what we're going to lump into the category of spanking is any kind of use of corporal punishment. You know, soap in the mouth, hot sauce in the mouth, all of that stuff. We're going to basically treat it the same way as spanking, but during the video I'm just going to say spanking for simplicity's sake. So, I understand that kids can have a lot of behavior problems and they can be really frustrating, and sometimes we adults feel really compelled to do something about behavior problems. Kids can struggle with lots of stuff, and sometimes kids can be doing behaviors that aren't safe, like hitting. They can, be destructive. They can be really defiant and have massive tantrums and things like that. But spanking, which is to say, striking a kid, probably on their backside or something like that, as a disciplinary strategy is just not a good way to go. So, we're going to talk about basically three big reasons for this. One of which is going to be something that those of you who watch my videos a lot are going to go, yes, you say this all the time, but it does bear repeating. So those three are as follows. Number one, punishments, spanking being one of those, don't teach skills. They don't help kids learn better behaviors. That's the first one. The second one is that spanking absolutely models something for the kid that we don't want to model for the kid, which is to say we're sort of teaching the kid to do something that we really don't want them to do. Number three is the fact that spanking is not an emotionally safe or even a physically safe practice, but certainly not emotionally safe. So let's get into these 3 points. So first point, which is to say that punishments don't teach skills. So the likelihood is that when we have a kiddo who is struggling badly enough that we would want to spank them, the likelihood is that that kiddo is displaying some fairly intense behaviors. Hitting, destroying things, etc. And I'm here to tell you that the overwhelming likelihood is that if kiddo is displaying behaviors that are that bad, there's a likelihood that that kiddo is struggling emotionally. And even if the kid's not really in that bad of a shape, emotionally speaking, in the moments where kiddo is doing behaviors that make us want to spank, there we go. What we have is feelings driving behaviors, and those behaviors are often a sort of answer to the feelings. They're driven by the feelings. So punishing and certainly spanking the kid is not going to teach anything. Punishments just don't do a good job of modifying behaviors. Really, about the only thing they're really going to do for you consistently is to get the kid mad. And last time I checked, a lot of misbehaviors, defiance, tantrums, things like that, tend to be associated with anger. So you can think of spanking in that situation as sort of like throwing gas on a fire. So this is the first point about spanking. Punishments just don't teach skills. They don't really do a good job of modifying behavior in any kind of meaningful or lasting way. The second point I'd like to make about spanking is that spanking absolutely models for the kid that when we're frustrated with others, we use power, force, and even aggression, frankly, in order to solve those problems. And it's funny how a lot of folks don't think of spanking as aggression. It's considered, well, that's an option. But that's exactly what it is. It's culturally sanctioned aggression towards a kid. Our intention is not for it to be sort of aggressive and scary, but it's hitting through and through. So we really want to think about that, particularly if we have a kid who's struggling with a lot of misbehaviors, including hitting other kids. It does not make sense to say, okay, we're now going to hit you. And when we're in a situation where we're tempted to spank because we want the kid to know what it's like to get hit, we really need to slow down and pay attention to what's really going on for us adults in situations like that. Because if we're checking closely, we should find that we're basically trying to sort of get back at the kid or express a strong level of frustration with the kid. It's not wrong to feel a lot of frustration for a child who's struggling a lot, but when we're paying attention, we will definitely see that the desire to spank and choosing to do so isn't exactly coming from a place of wanting to guide and teach and help the child deal with underlying problems that are probably driving their misbehaviors. Further, it also teaches the kid that, hey, this is what we do when we're frustrated with each other, and so it can give the kid mixed messages for sure. The third point about spanking we've already kind of addressed a little bit, which is to say that often when we have a kid who's struggling with a lot of behaviors that are a problem, there's a lot of feelings like anger and potentially hurt of some kind that are going on in order to drive those misbehaviors. It's not so much that one causes the other exactly, it's more complicated than that, but the feelings very often go kind of missed and unaddressed. So you can imagine what it would be like for you if you were in a situation where maybe you were doing some stuff at home that was making everyone else mad, making your spouse mad, and suddenly they decide to start hitting you on your backside because they're frustrated with you. It's certainly not going to make you feel the safety that you would need in order to kind of slow down and go, okay, well, what's really happening for me right here? Clearly, I'm not having a good impact on other people close to me. In fact, it would probably make you want to do the opposite, which is to say, you'd probably want to go, fine, now I'm really going to act out because I really don't feel good about this. Or it could generate enough fear for you that you end up using sort of sheer force to try to suppress behavior and things like that. And that can create a lot of tension. It's really hard to sustain. And we don't need to use things like fear as a motivator or a means of handling behavior. We can use other things like concern and problem solving and cultivating trust and respect and confidence and things like that. So spanking turns out not to be a great way to go for these three big reasons. I'm not here to tell you that if out of frustration you've spanked your kid that you've done this horrible thing to your kid. Please, I promise you I'm not necessarily trying to guilt trip anyone. It's just more, I would just say there are so many other ways of managing behavior and so many other ways of helping kids who are struggling. And I've tried to touch on some of those in this channel, and I will continue to do so. It just boils down to why would you spank when there's so many other much better ways to handle kids? So it's for these three reasons that I strongly advise folks against spanking. So the first one that we covered is that punishments really don't teach skills. They don't modify behavior in a realistic way. Number two, spanking teaches the kid that using force and even aggression is okay in certain situations. And number three, kids who are struggling with sort of spankable misbehaviors often are doing so because of emotional difficulties. And, smacking a kid on the backside isn't going to solve any emotional difficulties last time I checked. So, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful, please feel free to subscribe. It really does help out the channel. We're growing here. And give me a thumbs up and go ahead and smash that bell notification so that you can be notified when my next video goes live. Thank you.